Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Edie Lush. I'm delighted to be hosting this session this afternoon. This is part 3 of Unlocking MENA'S Capital Continuum. Big words. Let me tell you what we're going to do today. We're going to be unlocking and diving into Saudi Arabia's thriving innovation ecosystem. What's extraordinary is what's happening all over Saudi Arabia. We'll hear about some of the partnerships that are being developed, as well as specifically what the NEOM Investment Fund is doing and some of the incredible innovation happening in NEOM. I'm still waiting for my invite, by the way.
You're very welcome.
Right, excellent. I'll get back to you on that. So we're also going to hear about some cooperation with Brazil. Saudi is connecting markets as well as unlocking local and global growth. So we've got a few goals for you guys today. We want you to understand some of the impact of one of the programs that Saudi Arabia is involved in, Startup20. We'll be talking about the vision of NEOM's investment fund, how it identifies promising startups and helps them get going. And we will literally hear about some that are getting going. We'll look at partnerships, cooperation, and we'll look at the role of the FII in supporting entrepreneurs as well. So let me introduce you to our speakers. President of Saudi G20 and Startup20, Chairman of Entrepreneurship Vision, His Royal Highness Prince Fahad bin Mansour AlSaud. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Edie.
And we also have the CEO of NEOM Investment Fund, Majid Mufti. Welcome.
Thank you, Edie. Nice to be here.
Nice to be here. Right. So let's dive straight in. Your Royal Highness, you've pretty much just got off the plane from Brazil. Not quite, but you were there in September.
Yes.
Tell us what Startup20 is, and in particular, what you were doing there in terms of connecting the ecosystem of startups.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having us here with you and giving us this opportunity. Startup20 is an engagement group, an official engagement group that is part of the G20, and it is similar to B20. It focuses on startups, innovation and investments, and entrepreneurship as an ecosystem. And it connects the G20 countries' startup ecosystems together to create a great global impact on these ecosystems.
Interesting. And how focused is Saudi Arabia specifically on startups and entrepreneurships?
So since the Vision 2030 started, we've seen a great growth in the number of startups and investments that has been done over here, and we've seen a lot of foreign investments that are coming to invest in these companies, and we've seen a lot of unicorns that came out of this region, and we also saw a lot of global companies that are now either opening their regional headquarters in Saudi or moving their headquarters, they're moving their whole company actually to Saudi. And I believe we have a great example from Brazil that I'll share later.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Ajit, tell us through the NEOM Investment Fund. Tell us what your strategy is for investing in startups here and around in the region.
So the NEOM Investment Fund is essentially the investment arm of NEOM. NEOM needs to be at the forefront of technology adoption and innovation.
Why?
It is the future city. And as the future city, we have to be seen and act in a way that is presenting entrepreneurs coming in, developers, like-minded individuals. What does the city of the future look like? And what are the technologies that need to be there? So when we think of a cognitive city, there's an incredible array of different technologies from the IoT side all the way to the solutions, the platforms that come with it. Just imagine a world of financial services and what that looks like into the future and how it's going to thrive. There's a voracious appetite for technology adoption into NEOM. And on the back of that, venture capital is used as one avenue as how we can bring in some of those technologies into NEOM today.
So you're investing both in startups within Saudi Arabia, also bringing in startups from abroad. talk a little bit about what the balance is.
We're agnostic on the geography, honestly. It really is about the technology and the entrepreneurs who are working on it. Today we have 15 economic sectors in NEOM that ranges from energy, food, water, media, and so on. Each and every one of these economic sectors has some type of technology capability gap that they need. We can either develop it in-house internally, or we're working with startup companies and we're cherry picking the ones that we'd like for us to invest into. And so the most important thing as a strategic investor is really what you do with the companies after the investment. And it's really about trying to bring in that technology into NEOM through some form of piloting, deployment, scaling of that technology. And that's really what adds value to the startups themselves.
Okay, we'll come back to some of the startups that you're investing in. Your Royal Highness, talk about how you are supporting investment in emerging markets, both here in the region as well as elsewhere.
Sure. So today we know that there is a great opportunity in emerging markets, and what we do is we offer the opportunities that we have here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as well as we also like to see and invest in the opportunities that we see in these emerging markets. So one of the examples that I can mention, we are creating a bilateral VC funds with all the G20 countries. And these funds will open the gate for these ecosystems to participate in these opportunities. And not only for the emerging countries, but the developed countries as well have the opportunity to join and to achieve some of these returns, as well as having some of the benefits from the developed countries as examples that can be done in these emerging countries. One of these examples is Uber and Careem. So Careem replicated what happened in the US with Uber, and now Uber acquired Careem and they own it. So that's the kind of support that we are trying to create and replicate.
So you're creating funds that are bilateral, is that right? So country to country.
Yes.
And the investment will be in emerging markets or in companies back here?
In all the G20 countries.
Okay.
So it's what we're doing is a Saudi fund, and we are working with other VCs from the G20 countries. We invest in that nation, and the other VC as well invest in our Saudi ecosystem. And I think that this is one of the starting points of the goals of Startup20. When it started as an engagement group, it started in India last year, and now it's continuing in Brazil. But what is great about this engagement group is that it focuses on improving the national ecosystem as well as improving the G20 and the global ecosystem when it comes into innovation and startups and investments. And that's mainly one of the great examples that we want to lead with, and we hope that we can initiate a fund that was also one of the objectives of Startup20 is to create a $1 trillion annual fund that invests in startups. So that's the goal, and we want to build towards that.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about sustainability, a big theme here at FII. Sustainable innovation, core value at NEOM, I know. Talk about what that means in practice about bringing sustainable innovation into Saudi.
I mean, sustainability is at the heart of NEOM. I mean, everything we do is really around having a new urban development and a new way of life that has sustainability at its core. When we think about mobility, the way we travel today in Riyadh and traffic and people flying in and out of the country, the question is, how can we do that in a more sustainable manner? So when we think of an investment thesis around mobility, it's really covering everything from multimodal modes of mobility to micro-mobility that goes into a green method of operation. We've invested into, for example, a company called Zero Avia, which has an engine that is using hydrogen as a feed in its powertrain. We've also invested into a company called Boom Supersonic, which is essentially trying to bring back the Concorde in a more efficient manner. Regent is a sea glider that is fully electric. And given the different archipelagos and islands that we have in NEOM, we're going to think about what that looks like. And so eVTOLs and other modes of transportation,
Robo
such as autonomous.
Taxis.
Pony AI is another company that we've invested into out of Asia. So going back to the earlier question around our geographic focus, which spans different markets. That is a robo taxi system and a fleet of cars that is going to be deployed and launched to do milk runs between some of the key locations that we have. So when we go at a investment approach, we're thinking about a whole thesis and thinking about how we continue to have that entire supply chain sustainable.
How close are any of these technologies to being used?
Actually, when we think about supersonic, that's a 2029, 2030 type of time frame. But robo-taxis are ready to be launched today. And so we've set up a joint venture, or are in the works of setting up a joint venture with Pony that will be based in Saudi Arabia. We'll have a fleet of different robo-taxis to be utilized in the NEOM region. So again, we go back to the question, it's not just the TopCo investment, it's what we're doing with the companies in NEOM, and that gives us an example as to how we're bringing in that technology and launching it. Now, clearly, sometimes you're going to need the regulator to approve certain things, but NEOM is a living lab. And because we're willing to try a lot of these technologies, a lot of the entrepreneurs and the startup companies find a real value that goes above and beyond the money that's coming in. And that is the opportunity to pilot and deploy, and this being one example of that.
Interesting. Royal Highness, talk to me about sustainable innovation and Startup20 as well. It's a core innovation there. How are you integrating into the approach?
So, as it is a core, we always like to recognize the companies that are working within this methodology, as well as encouraging other companies to adapt to this core.
Give me an example.
There is a lot of examples, but the example that I want to highlight on is why we are working with NEOM in Startup20, and why NEOM is sponsoring and being a strategic partner, because NEOM has this as a core, and it is looking for the opportunities around the world to invite them to be part of NEOM's great vision and mission. And today, I believe that there is a lot of innovative companies that are already talking with NEOM from our participation that we had in Brazil and as well in India. And they are in different sectors. And one of the main examples is not only startups, even large corporates.
Right.
For example, we saw an article that NEOM will consume 20% of the steel of the world. And we met one of the largest steel manufacturer company in Brazil that is now planning to come and to set up his factory in Oxygen. So what we are seeing with our participation and with NEOM supporting us is way beyond what we are thinking of just being there to find these technologies, but it's driving more investments into the kingdom, and it's giving others the opportunity to get their returns as well from these investments. And as an example that we also see in the culture, today we went there. We saw and met a lot of great entrepreneurs and partners. Today we have them here sitting in the audience. And some of them you will not recognize that they are from Brazil.
Right.
They're wearing thob and shmag. If you can see that
Give us a wave.
person there. Yes.
Nice.
They are Brazilians, and he runs the #1 tech conference in Brazil. So these connections that we are building is way beyond just startups and
Got it.
investments and innovation.
And it's beyond, it gives a new meaning to ecosystem, doesn't it? It's everything else that it's around.
Definitely.
Let's talk a little bit more about, you mentioned some of the different sectors, Majid. There's also different regions within NEOM. Highlight one or two of those and talk a little about some of the innovation that's happening within them. We talked about mobility. Give me another one of the sectors as well.
So just to kind of lay out the backdrop of it, NEOM is a region that's 26,000 square kilometers. And you've seen renditions and renders of the line, which is the largest project. But we also have Oxagon, which is the industrial city that His Royal Highness just mentioned. We have Trojena, which is in the mountainous region. Sindala, which recently launched just this past weekend, our very first destination that opened up to the wider public. We're very proud of that moment. And then Magna, which goes across the Aqaba Strip with different enclaves that are being developed there. All of these regions are supported by those 15 economic sectors in terms of setting up businesses, laying out infrastructure, bringing in talent, and really trying to start up an ecosystem. The role of NIF is really to support a transaction need for all sectors. So we've brought in all the investment professionals into one house, and we're supporting all 15 sectors in terms of their joint venture requirements, acquisitions, long-term partnerships, and venture capital needs. When we think of a 100% renewable energy region, there's an incredible amount of infrastructure, but also technology that's needed to sustain that. 100% renewable means you need to be renewable in the evening time as well.
Right.
So yes, you do have your solar panels and your wind farms during the daytime, or, well, when continues, but you also need storage in order for that solar capacity to go back into the grid. A storage mix is different. It varies from pumped hydro down to battery and everything in between. But to ensure that you have no intermittence, you're looking for technologies that can handle that. So we're looking at investments in what they call LDES, long duration energy storage. And that's in another investment thesis as to what comes into it. We recently invested into a company called Intervenue that really has the capacity to be able to provide hours of energy storage at a much cheaper levelized cost of energy. And so you have to think of a commercial mindset along with where the technology gaps are as well.
Is it harder or easier when you're starting almost from scratch, designing it? Does it make it more complicated because you've got various, endpoints in mind, or is it easier because it doesn't exist yet?
The blank canvas theory actually is a double-edged sword. I have to be honest about it. That's a good question, Eddie. So on one side, it is great to have a blank canvas because you're able to start from no legacy. And that works very well when you're coming in with a major infrastructure and you're starting bottom up. Sometimes it gets more harder when you need regulatory approvals and you need the consumer market to come to a level of comfort to start using these things. So it's okay when it comes to industrial applications, but when it comes to financial services or healthcare, it starts to get a little bit more difficult.
Right.
And so it works on, in some ways, not the other. We have that in mind as we think of our investment approach, but we do have that risk appetite to really try and push the envelope in terms of what things need to be done for the future of tomorrow. Interesting.
So, Your Royal Highness, let's talk about some of the investment coming into Saudi. You talked there about the Brazilian steel company that's going to be manufacturing in Oxagon. What other partnerships do you want to highlight? India, Brazil, that are bringing investment into the kingdom?
So I have a lot of examples, but I'll try to find the best ones. One of the great opportunities we had from India is a company called Let's Venture. Let's Venture is an ecosystem that have 15,000 accredited angel investors and 800 family offices, 500 global VCs, and they are interested to come and set up in Saudi. So if they come, they're coming with all of these investors. And for me, this kind of strategic opportunities can open a lot of opportunities for our local ecosystem and for any international entrepreneur that is being in Saudi. One of the examples that I wanted to highlight, before going to Brazil, I attended a conference. It was the Saudi Unicorns conference. And they were exhibiting the companies that were there, and I saw a Brazilian flag. So I walked to the founder, and I'm like, what are you doing here? And he said, I joined the program, and I moved to Saudi, and I came here because it is the right time and the right place for my business. And he made this decision on his own, and he had a sport tech solution that he's providing. So people are recognizing these opportunities even without us going and telling them. And by the way, he's also standing over here.
They're lurking.
Ivan. And he has a nice video that will come out today.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes, and these are one of the great examples that we have.
Lots of them. Okay. Well, go fast, go alone, go far, go together. I know that partnerships is at the core of both what you're both doing. Talk a little bit, Majid, about give me one international joint venture in NEOM and the effect that it's already having.
I mean, we have, so a joint venture, for example, is the Green Hydrogen Project, which is a three-way joint venture between ourselves, Aqua Products, and Air Products, and Aqua Power. But that's a $9 billion project that we also are very, very proud of because it goes back to the sustainability. This is green hydrogen at the largest scale globally that's being developed.
It is the largest green hydrogen plant in the world. It's extraordinary.
It is, and it's renewable energy that's being. So it's when we say green, that means there's no different hydrocarbons that are being used to power the electrolyzers. That's not done of this scale anywhere else. We also have a joint venture with a company called OneWeb. These are low Earth orbital satellites that are basically used to Wi-Fi the region. And so you have a lot of connectivity using satellites to be able to do that. These are some of the joint ventures that we're putting together. Again, another one with the Robo Taxis joint ventures, another one on the eVTOL side. So we're really starting to create businesses in NEOM, and that's a job creator, which is very important for us. We're looking forward to have some of the inventor community to also come into NEOM when we're ready to host them. And we want that place to really be a hive of intellectual capacity that's working on developing solutions for the future.
Final comment to you, Your Royal Highness. Talk a little bit about partnerships. Name one partnership that you're excited. You've already mentioned a few. Give me one more.
So I think it's almost ending time. I just want to highlight a couple of things that today representing the kingdom in Startup20 is a great honor and mission for me as a Saudi. One of the opportunities that we have next year is going to be in South Africa, and the year after is going to be in the US, and the summit is going to be in Silicon Valley, which is the heart of startups.
Yeah.
And we have Chris with us over here that is representing the US in Startup20. And I believe that this shows you, first of all, how these partnerships are not only in papers, but it's happening in reality. And I wanted to thank my dear friend Richard Atayas for putting the last piece of the puzzle of FII by having this investment day and giving opportunities to entrepreneurs and angel investors and the startup ecosystem and VCs to be part of this great forum. And I believe that with him ending his role, he completed the
journey.
full journey with the best final piece of the puzzle. So I would like to thank him and thank the PIF for having a great forum that is, I believe, the best one in the world.
Absolutely.
And I would like to thank you and Majid and everyone for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness. Thank you to Majid, and thank you to our fantastic audience for being here to learn more about unlocking MENA'S Capital Continuum. Thank you.
Thank